got us a nice, cool, cloudy morning. Good for me because I sweat peeling an orange, but it's perfect because we get to pull out our DN1 and we're gonna move it up and put it under the knife. It's time to start pulling its drivetrain and get it prepared for our new NATT swap that's going in its place. This is technically part 3 of the series, and today, hopefully, we're gonna be getting the engine installed with no issues. So, I actually had some of you guys remind me of a couple things in the comment section, since things just get so hectic sometimes I forget. There's a check valve ball that we dropped down in our oil feed that can potentially lead to our oil pump. Now, you never want this to happen because this can tear your motor up. So, we've done a little bit of research before we freaked out after we already lost a lot of sleep last night thinking about this. On the NA block, you actually have check valves like this, which are in the block instead of the oil tree. On the TT, they're in the oil tree. So these pretty much bypass the filter if it's clogged so the engine doesn't destroy itself. So I actually found a check valve ball from another block that we just removed for some testing, and I've got this block that we've been waiting to work on, machine, and rebuild. So if I drop this check valve, every time it comes out of this hole right here. Sometimes I can drop it just right and it'll get stuck right there and I can still grab it with a magnet. So our goal is we're going to try to retrieve this without pulling anything off, because that's going to be detrimental. That's going to take so much more time and put such a big monkey wrench in my plans. I probably wouldn't be able to make Prison Mike's project car meet. So that's really our goal right now, and we need to keep pushing forward with a little bit of research between dropping it here and watching it fall out, testing with a magnet, testing depth, all that, and no passages go anywhere else. So what happens is when your oil pump's mounted here, your oil pickup tube pulls oil, the pump circulates it, pumps it through here, which then comes out of this bottom hole. That then seeps into here behind the filter, the vacuum pulls it through, which then goes into here and feeds the whole block and heads with an oil supply. So we have taken an oil pump, and you can drop a bearing in here, or the ball. You can move it around wherever you want. You can spin the pump and it doesn't dislodge the ball. You can always get it back, as you see right there. So like I said, instead of tearing this all apart, before we start anything motor related, we're going to try to get this thing out. But since it's supposed to rain in 2 hours, we need to prioritize playing musical cars so we can get it where we can indefinitely pull the DN1 up here into the shop, because I want to put this over here, so I got to find somewhere to move the vert. This is horrible to do by myself, let alone for you guys to watch. We'll be back in a moment. Got her up and running, let it idle out a second, and we should be able to pull it in here without issue. The only thing I'm kind of skeptical about is down here, if my intercoolers and intercooler ducts are actually going to hit. Last thing I want to do is ruin some Stillen intercooler and intercooler ducts. It's definitely going to have to come off. It may be alright. It looks like it's tall enough. It's looking like it's going to be pretty close. So it begins. At least it's in here now. But before I get on to that, you remember in the last video how I said I was more of a squish person when it came to RTV and I didn't smear and smudge? Well, yeah, that has already came to bite me in the butt. When I had this motor flipped over, I noticed that it was leaking a little bit of oil because it was getting over here on the motor mount. I thought it was the oil tree here. Nope, sure enough, it's right there, and that's even after I wiped it up. So you can see there's definitely not enough squish there. Pan's got to come off. 3rd time. So I'm not as upset about this. That gives me a little bit more room to mess with the oil pump, and I think I decided what we're going to do there. We'll show you more when we get there, obviously, but we're gonna pour oil down the pickup, spin it over, try to get the oil to pump out. And when that oil comes from up here, like I showed on the block at the beginning, it comes up, goes back, and then drains right there. So it should come straight to the oil filter. If I get enough oil moving, I should be able to pump it out and push that ball out from here. Then I don't have to take the turbo and oil tree off to be able to fish it out, or the oil pump, because that is going to be a nightmare if I have to do. That means everything timing related has to come off, and that sets me back a whole day. I think we're going to tackle this first before we get to pulling everything out, because we're going to get the motor ready to drop. Just took the pan off, so now we're going to flip it over kind of on its side this way, at least angled this way, because the goal is as we feed this and it gravity feeds down into the pump and we spin it over, we want it to be pushing up and out here. So we're going to take the filter off so then we can see it hopefully fill up down here, and then I would think by that point we'd be able to flip it over, dump out what's in here, and it should push the ball out. You can see right there we filled our oil pickup tube up. So I remember one of you guys actually commented once that don't they spin counterclockwise? If you watch the oil as I spin it counterclockwise, it doesn't go down. But if I spin it clockwise, it'll slowly pump that oil down. So in theory, I would think that these actually rotate clockwise. So we're just gonna keep pumping this and spinning it over. Hopefully we can get as much as this through. No more than about 6 full spin overs later, and this is what we've got. So this is where it gets messy. We're gonna have to just yeet this thing on its side to get all this oil under it. Well, you guys, we came to the conclusion, oil pump's coming off. I'm not gonna sit here and waste my time trying. We're just gonna make it happen. That was close. Put your stopper bolt in before you yank it off. The only reason that I kind of just decided to pull this to begin with, I actually ordered oil pump gaskets and oil pickup O-rings and gaskets, depending what year. Late models have gaskets and the early models have O-rings. I'm honestly just not wanting to play with it. I want to make sure it's out. I'm afraid it fell into the oil pump already. So with that being on the engine stand, it's impossible for me to kind of tilt it, and I just want to get it over with, and I think this is the fastest way to attack it. Now I wonder, is it a gasket? It's a gasket. Oh my gosh. No way. You've got to be kidding me right now. Someone used RTV for a pickup. Dude. What? That is ultimate hack job. This motor is so lucky that I got a hold of it. Alright, let's get our gaskets and stuff and let's put this thing back together. Just kidding. Let's pull this oil pump. Here's the moment of truth. You know how frustrated I'm gonna be if like I can't find this thing. Didn't come out the oil pump. So that leads me to using this. I gotta get this thing as clean as possible so I'm not getting that oil feed right here all dirty. Well, that's annoying. What's going on? You know, you guys, I've been looking everywhere for this thing. Honestly, I think it's been right under our nose the whole time. When I pulled this off, I heard that little tink. It may have been in the video, but I see this down here. Bam. That should be it. You would think, you know, it's sitting in oil, so coincidentally, I actually just happened to remember to drop it down here. You can see, he actually got it out. So let's go ahead and grab a new gasket. Let's get this oil pump back on. Oh yes, so happy when things finally come together. Even though it took a lot extra work than anticipated, but it's working now. So we've done a little bit of work here over the past day. Yeah, it's the next day, I know. So last night, I actually threw in the towel. I had to do a little bit of thinking, and I had to be real with myself. Both of these car shows are 7-hour round trip, not to mention whatever potential cruising or doing whatever else. This car, I've never driven it on the street. I don't know what the suspension's like. I don't know how it rides, how it drives, power steering. I don't know anything about this car. And not to mention, with me being in such a rush and missing and doing stupid things here with this motor, like that check valve ball that I had to tear everything apart, I end up having to do this pan 3 times instead of 1 like I should. I was in such a rush to get it done, and being in a rush and doing things right does not go hand in hand. So, a little life lesson for me: we're just going to take our time, we're going to do it right. Hence why I took the extra time to even paint up this lower cover and just clean everything up. I wasn't doing that or have that mentality at the beginning. I was just trying to get it done instead of going the extra mile like I always do. Lesson learned. Always do your best in whatever you do. Don't take shortcuts. So, a couple realizations. This upper water pipe's actually different. You can see just the angle and whatnot. Not a big deal. Tons of different ways to run a radiator hose. I just sealed that up, finally got it torqued down, figured it was best to finally get you guys on here because I've been working 6 hours this morning, just getting everything buttoned up, fixing things that I've messed up, and, you know, cleaning. And about right when I was getting a little frustrated, where have my parts been that I've been waiting on? I just went up, checked the mailbox, nothing there. No longer than it took me to go in and get a bottle of water, FedEx showed up and dropped the box off. We're going to continue. We're going to get this motor ready to drop in. However, we're not focusing on getting this engine out the rest of this video. One thing I'll mention while you're in here, take your cast off your bracket, pop it out, wire wheel around your cast, wire wheel your bracket, and lube it up with something. Them things get stuck together and make it impossible to time and turn that sensor. Just a useful little tip, because there's so many useful little tips. Now actually, let's install some fuel injectors. Let's clean this rail out real quick so we know there's no debris inside, nothing gonna clog our new injectors, and make it a little more presentable, because this pink overspray is just not doing it. Now we got somewhat cleaned up, still a little bit of pink residual. But here we actually have a 1000cc OS fuel injector. These usually say the CC rating etched on the bottom as well as the injector number, and they also have these billet pintle caps. This is an OEM injector that has the plastic cap, which are prone to failure over time as they get brittle. When you get these nowadays, it's hard to get a good supplier. Most of them come from China from just a not good material, so they are known to fail. Not only are these good because of these billet pintle caps that won't fall off, these actually are very affordable and reliable. So we actually just lubed up the O-ring here with this oil. You can use petroleum jelly as well. And to install them into the rail, push inward, you want to twist, and it just popped right in. I'll always pop these out one last time to observe the O-rings to make sure nothing pinched. So that way there's no risk of hydrolocking, and not only that, but having to tear all of this back down and do it again. Let's put the rest of these in the rail and get them ready for installation. Also, I should mention, these also don't always pop in that easy, especially if you have the adapter kit for early style rails. Once you have your injectors all seated, put your seals on your rail. I prefer to put them here than in the intake because it helps to actually sit them in it a little bit straighter. Now I'm actually going to take the rail, put it in place before I cut the line for my fuel line. I know where it's at, and I don't have to rely on someone else's cut previously that may have not have been right. Now let's change arguably one of the most important sensors on the car, coolant temp sensor. If your connection to this is bad, it can cause your car to not start and have hard starts, especially when hot, because it thinks it's cold and it commands a different timing than it does when it's hot. So basically your car advances the timing on a cold start to help warm it up. Once it gets closer to operating temp, it'll drop it down to 15 degrees where it should be. So when you install this, make sure you put your crush washer on. Stock OEM are red. So now you know if you got a red one or anything that's not blue, throw it away. Next, I think it's time to take care of some water lines. So if you remember, I said you can plumb these anywhere on either side. It does not matter. This one I recommend down here, right here, up here. So we're actually gonna run these real quick so that we can give you guys the visual representation, since we have so much more to do and so much more to show. So I completely forgot that I had a couple of these silicone lines that I wanted to run. So we actually switched to these after we ran this one with our normal hose. So in theory, this should be the only one to ever break, but we got this long line routed up here to this, and then this top line is routed to the front short water pipe. For this side, we have this one up here, drop down below to this lower water line. Then your water line up here by your outlet coupler is looped back and right into here. So that's how you run all these with your NA lines. You can just bypass both of these short lines and just run straight from here to over here, and you can cut your hard lines out and just run a simpler setup. Especially if you run a catch can, then you have no use for this back here whatsoever. I think it's a good time to go ahead and put these outlet pipes on. Make sure you get your couplers and clamps snugged very tight, because it's going to be nearly impossible to get to them things with this in the car. It's possible, but it just depends where you place your hose clamps. Now that we got them outlet pipes both mounted up and snug, we did clip the old dipstick and just put that plug in there for now, and we'll have the dipstick later to be able to throw on. We did just find us a crank pulley that managed to have no chips around it, so we put a little rag in the middle to protect the mating surface here, and we just touched it up with some rust reformer. Rust converter, same thing. And we actually need to get an alternator bracket, transmission harness, and we need to get a power steering pump. Now if you do paint your pulley, I recommend you go back with a white paint pen and mark your 15 degrees and your mark on your crank pulley, which is top dead center, so that way you can time it much easier. We also went ahead, we actually went and grabbed a alternator and a power steering pump assembly. They were still bolted together from the same motor, and we threw them back on. I noticed the J30 has an angled fitting here when the Z is actually just straight out. So that shouldn't be a problem, just means the hose won't be like this, it'll be like this. We did also touch up this pulley for alternator. So we actually need to double nut these studs, snug them up a little bit before we actually put nuts on this. Actually a little tip for you guys that I just discovered. If you're running no AC pulley or bracket and your bolt is too long for your oil pump down here, if you do an EGR delete, these two bolts that actually bolt back here fit perfectly to make up for that missing bracket. The more you know. So after looking at all these belts, I'm really not sure what they're all for. 3 different part numbers. I wonder if these are twin turbo belts, because none of these are wide enough, or they're actually too wide. These are all 4 rib when this is a 3 rib pulley. So we did just find a TT water pump pulley. You can see here alone, this thing really just kind of covers it. It's a little bit bigger, about the thickness of where it holds the belt. So we managed to release it all the way, and we managed to tighten it back, and we're actually getting adjustment back out to where we can use this belt. So we need to find a fan before we put that on. We also managed to find an OEM belt for power steering, because let's just be honest, I always need one of these things. So we're going to be all good in the belt department. If you don't know how this stuff works, there's a nut that you crack loose right here, and then you have to also crack the mount loose, which you get access to right here. And the same for here, you're 17 mil down here, and you got a 12 mil in the back to crack it loose. Once you have it loose to where this can slide on the adjuster bracket, and so the pump itself can pivot on its mount bolt, you'll loosen those accordingly. As you loosen this and pull the bolt out, it'll give you more room to push this bolt in to adjust it inwards. So when you tighten it and you're pulling those threads through, it pulls it out and tensions it on the belt. Tighten. So that's how your tensioners work for all your belts. Now let's find a fan, get that sorted, and we'll be back in just a moment. Got the fan on. I did notice once we got the fan blade on how close it is, and I see why they recommend to change it, but there will not be a shroud on this particular build, so this will be just fine. It's probably a whole inch off. Now I think it's honestly time that we go ahead and we just take the next step. I already cleaned up the surface with some brake cleaner and a rag. Make sure it's all clean. Now we need to find out, what plenum do we use? Alrighty, here goes nothing. Will the test fit be successful? Looks successful to me. After we've evenly seated the plenum, we'll go back and hit it with the 12 foot-pounds in a spiral pattern. Once we finish the pattern, we always go back and verify torque one extra time. See, that one right there was slightly under 12 because we snugged the rest of them down and I realized it wasn't as tight. We just went ahead and threw our coil packs in, snugged all of our 12 mils down. Now to help wrap up everything to get this engine off the stand, we've got some PCV valves. Usually on E85 I recommend a catch can unless you change your oil very frequently because of the condensation. Your pan will pick up the condensation, it'll kind of water it down a little bit, turn it kind of milky. You just got to be ahead of it, either drive a lot, long distances, keep the motor hot, or change your oil frequently. This one's pretty self-explanatory. Your curved one's on the passenger side and your thick straight one is the driver's side. PCVs, both installed. Now we're actually going to have to make this a stopping point, at least for a couple hours. We have to go to Gabby's family for a cookout, so we will be back here momentarily. So we pretty much have like 4 or 5 things left before this thing is ready to drop in or just be finished. So almost there. We'll be back in a moment. I'll admit, it's the next day. Gabby's uncle made a killer smoked pulled pork with some fantastic macaroni, so I ate a little too much last night. Let's just say we didn't make it back out. But this video is coming out today, so we got to get this all finished up, and at least this portion of the video. So we're going to leave out the clutch flywheel part of this. This will be the beginning when we install it back into here, because we actually have to pull it off of this motor. I have a clutch for the power rating for this motor already over here. It's just I need the flywheel out of here because we need to use a twin turbo flywheel to accommodate our twin turbo transmission or bell housing. So we did just go ahead and throw some EGR plates on here. We forgot to do that before we put the plenum on. That's no big deal. Just 2 10-mil bolts and a lack of access to get to it. So we've got everything all lifted up. We're ready to get the engine off the stand. I don't know how much I'm going to cut out previously just because of our mishaps, but now that you got your screw in and it's somewhat solid, just kind of crank it in and get a little bit of bite on that seal. Now, once you get the screw in and you've got some threads biting it, you just take your claw hammer like this, pry outwards. Wow, that worked phenomenally. We should have started with that. So if you look in here, inspect your crank, it appears I scratched it ever so slightly. Yeah, so just make sure your screw's not like this and do the screw before you start prying on it and ruin that. I know it's kind of hard to see. You can see this scratch versus where the seal actually sits. And it looks like we are perfectly fine. This will not hinder or cause any issues. So clean up all of your surrounding area to make sure you don't knock any debris in. Sorry, this is the only fixed position I can find. Take your new rear main. You know, I actually didn't lube the outside. I went ahead and just did the inside only, just to see what the hype's about. Shine up that crank. Definitely some not goodness in there. Now when you install your seal, try to tuck it down and get this inner lip to seat before you start pressing it in. You want to make sure that the inside lip of the seal is around the crank and not folded up, or else you'll ruin the seal pushing it on and that spring will pop out from behind it, essentially become ineffective. Once you verify that it's started all around, take a hammer, just give it a couple of taps to get it seated. Use a mallet too, obviously. That's probably a little more preferred. Once we start getting it closer to the crank, now we can start using our extension, and we lay this here so we can get it as flush as possible with your retainer right here. Usually I start hitting every 3 o'clock position, like 12, 3, 6, and 9. Then I go back and I hit it in between once I get it more seated, so that way we can evenly seat the whole seal. Rear main seal is as flush as it can be. Now it looks like our scrape is well within reason. We'll just knock down some edges on that here with some Scotch-Brite, just in case it had any hard edge per se. Now that the rear main's finished, it's time to get on to our pilot bushing. Here's our trusty steed that we have used to probably pull 10 or so pilot bearings, bushings, whatever. So here we have this 3-jaw pilot bearing puller, and the slight modification that's needed is I don't know how well you can see, but you actually have to grind these down, because these are actually full points from that raise point all the way down to the tip. So you have to put a little bit of an arch in it to allow it to get room to actually compress, go in here and bite. You just want to put your 3 arms and your bushing. So also when you're tightening this down, make sure both of your legs are flat. You don't want to put a gouge on the end of your crank. But you have to have enough room to be able to push it in all the way and then open the arms. So this right here is how you send this little thing in the middle, how you can push it forward and spread these arms out. So once you get it in a good position where you're ready to do so, spin the outer one to open up the arms inside to grab your bushing, and tighten down your nut right here to put tension on it. So this works as well as you can get a bite in there on your pilot bearing. Now as we tighten this nut, you should be able to see it pull out. Keep your tool straight, don't let the torque, you move it to the side like it just did for me, and it'll pull out. I'm sure you guys can see that, but it's moving like 1/16 of an inch at a time. Oh, well, that's how you remove your autopilot bushing or bearing, whichever. Sorry if that was a little difficult to watch. Like I said, I really need a new tripod, at least a small one, since the one here on my actual 3-way handle thing that extends is broke. I'm also going to order a new handle so it stops that creaking, popping sound for you guys, because that drives me crazy enough, let alone you guys, I can only imagine. Now before you install your new bushing, just clean up anything in here, any residual, maybe metal, rust. So I don't know entirely what you should use to install it with. However, the perfect thing that I found is I got an old cheap ratchet. This ratchet was what I used to install it. I don't know how well you can see that rounded portion on the end. That's from beating pilot bearings in. It's been a couple days. Is it still in here? There she is. Time's a-wasting. Frosty. Take that pilot bushing, put it in place, persuade with a hammer. The biggest thing here is just hitting it in straight. All right, well that's definitely not supposed to happen. Look at this. The bushing is breaking. It's cracked. Dude, you've got to be kidding me. Well, this is irritating. I've definitely never had this happen. Give it one of those since it wants to do it to us anyways. Here's the official nail in the coffin. We're not making the show. Sorry, you guys. I tried. I don't know if I left it in there too long. Like, I left it in there like 3 days just because I knew. I don't know. I've literally never had one split like that, so I'm just a little irritated, frustrated, whatever. Stuff happens. Let's move on. Now it's time for our final piece to the puzzle, knock sensor. So you can see this sensor has an upgraded style sheathing or weather protector from the elements, unlike this cruddy one, as you can see. So usually when it comes to installing these, oh yikes, I just realized since I put my PCV in, there's no way I can fit this where it's supposed to go. No worries. So it has this upgraded connector style as well. Clip them together. The easiest way I've found to do this is to fish your sensor to where you can see when the bolt is in the bolt hole. I don't know how well you guys can see it, but it's right there. The shadow's right on the edge of it. So you want to move where your bolt's on top of that, and then you can jam your hand just enough to spin with these 2 fingers to get it to tighten enough to where you can pull out a ratcheting wrench. So let's try to finagle this thing. Once you get it on enough, this is about your extent of tightening it. Ratcheting wrenches are your best friend here. That should do it. Our sensor doesn't move. It appears everything is about how I would like it. So instead of running the typical way, we're just going to run it up. Usually it mounts on a bracket that's right here at the same part as the fuel rail ground strap. So usually it would sit kind of like this. I think that's going to wrap up this, you guys. Sorry about the pilot bushing. Hopefully we can start off next video, or at least next video, with the DN1 and we can get that sorted. Honestly, next video, as much as I want to make it an NATT next progression video, I actually think we're going to be better off if we go ahead and start and actually completely finish our convertible project. Eric just messaged us last night, asked us kind of what's up with it. I felt bad to tell him that we kind of had to put it on the back burner, but we want to get it done so we can fix our slick top. I need to drive that thing to Tennessee this October, the day of my birthday, so we can go on vacation and so I can go to the Tail of the Dragon. I really want to get all of my kit and just everything I can on that car, maybe get it painted. Not holding my breath on that one, but we need to get that car back on the road. I'm sorry if this video wasn't very helpful or entertaining or anything to you guys, because this video did not go in one single bit planned as I wanted it to go. But we're here. The motor's ready, with the exception of our wiring harness for our alternator and trans and our downpipes. Obviously clutch flywheel, pilot bushing, but that's a whole nother animal. I need to check into this and maybe find a way that I can measure to actually install it correctly, and so we don't break another one. I also have to order one, so kind of on the back burner now. We have to get onto the convertible. Now we're gonna head inside, we're gonna edit this video, and we're gonna get it posted today for you guys. Hope you guys liked the video. If you did, please don't forget to drop a like and subscribe down below so you can stay tuned for more content. Really just for more Nissan stuff, if that's what you're into. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching. Peace.